When St. John gives us an account of something that's happened to Jesus in his gospel, it's very vivid and often more detailed than in the synoptics, Matthew, Mark and Luke, because Matthew, Mark and Luke are covering much more ground in terms of the parables and the sayings of Jesus. But you take the cure of the man born blind in John's Gospel, or the wedding of Cana. These are told in quite a bit of detail and they're very vivid. So I'm going to read the account of the wedding at Cana, which is in chapter 2 of St. John's Gospel, but in even greater detail in Maria Valtorta's work, of course, as it always is. But prior to that, I'm going to explain how it comes to be that Jesus ends up at the wedding of Cana, and that's the preceding chapter. And it's in volume 1 of the poem of the Man God. It's chapter 51, and it's entitled Judas Thaddeus at Bethsaida to invite Jesus to the wedding at Cana, given on the 17th of October 1944. I see the kitchen in Peter's house. In addition to Jesus, there are Peter and his wife, James and John. And that, by the way, Peter's wife's name is Porphyria, and we get some interesting character information about her as we go through. The poem builds up a nice little picture of Peter's very shy and possibly long-suffering wife. I think they've just finished eating their supper. They are talking, and Jesus takes an interest in fishing. Andrew enters and says, Master, there is the man here in whose house you are living, together with another man who says he is your cousin. Jesus gets up and goes towards the door, saying, Let them come in. And when he sees Judas Thaddeus in the light of the oil lamp and of the fireplace, he exclaims, You, Judas? Yes, Jesus. They kiss each other. Now, note that John's Gospel, when the wedding of Cana happens, it's chapter 2, very early in the Gospel. This is before all the disciples have been called. And Judas Thaddeus, who is a disciple, St. Jude, as we know from Scripture and a letter that he gives us, as well as in the Synoptic Gospels, he is eventually an apostle, but at this stage he's not. Judas Thaddeus is a handsome man, in the fullness of his virile manhood. He is tall, although not quite so tall as Jesus, well built and strong, of a dark brown olive complexion, like St. Joseph when young, but not sallow. His eyes have something in common with those of Jesus, because they are blue, verging on periwinkle. His brown beard is squarely cut, his hair wavy, but not so curly as Jesus's, and is the same hue as his beard. I've come from Capernaum. I went there by boat, and I've come here in the same boat to gain time. Your mother sends me. She says, Susanna is getting married tomorrow. Please come to the wedding. Mary will be there, and also my mother and brothers. All the relatives have been invited. You would be the only one absent, and they ask you to come to make the young couple happy. Just a note that Susanna is mentioned. That is the Susanna who's briefly mentioned in the Gospels. She, we now learn then, is to be the bride, and St. John doesn't mention her, but we now see how she comes into the community around Jesus during his public ministry. Jesus bows lightly, stretching out his arms, and says, A wish of my mother is a law for me, but I will come also for Susanna's and our relatives' sake. Only, I'm sorry for you. And he looks at Peter and the others. They're my friends, he explains to his cousin. And then he mentions their names, beginning with Peter's. He then adds, and this is John, with a special expression that causes Judas Thaddeus to look at him more carefully, while the beloved disciple blushes. He ends the introduction stating, My friends, this is Judas, son of Alphaeus, my cousin, according to the custom of the world, because he is the son of the brother of my mother's spouse, a very good friend of mine, and a companion both in life and in work. Just notice how Jesus says he's his cousin according to the custom of the world. And he refers to St. Joseph not as his father, but as his mother's spouse. We know why that is, because Jesus has no physical father, and St. Joseph was his foster father. But Alphaeus is the physical brother of St. Joseph. Alphaeus, also known as Clopas in Scripture, is the husband of Mary, also known as Mary Clopas, or Mary of Alphaeus, and they had 4 children: James, Joseph, Jude, and Simon. And these 4 men are mentioned in Matthew's and Mark's Gospels. And they are the cousins of Jesus. Now elsewhere, Jesus explains to us, the reader, that he's putting the word cousin in there instead of brother, which will be the term he would have used, adelphos, in actually speaking to these people, I should say the Aramaic form of brother. But he's putting the word cousin in there for our sake, because he wants it to be clear that Mary had no other children. And it's only modern Protestants who make an issue about this. I think John Calvin even said, look, it's ridiculous to say that Mary had other children. These are cousins. And indeed they are. But they can be called brothers because that was the way of expressing the cousin-family relationship in ancient Israel at the time of Jesus.